Loss is one of the few things in life that is guaranteed, yet no one prepares us for it. When it happens, it feels like the ground beneath us has disappeared. The world keeps moving, but you're stuck in a moment that no longer exists. Everything feels different. The absence is heavy. And no matter how many people tell you, time heals all wounds, it doesn't feel that way when you're the one grieving. But here's the truth. Grief isn't something you fix. It's something you integrate. Most people try to escape it, numb it, or rush through it. But the real healing comes when you allow grief to be a part of you without letting it define you. It's not about forgetting. It's about learning how to carry the love without carrying the pain in the same way. And throughout history, some of the greatest minds have wrestled with this exact struggle. They didn't just offer clichés. They lived through grief, broke under its weight, and found ways to make sense of it. The Stoics believed that grief isn't just about losing someone. It's about losing control. Death is one of the few things we cannot change, yet it affects us so deeply. Epictetus, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, lost his parents at a young age. His perspective, it's not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. He wasn't saying we don't feel. He was saying that the pain of grief isn't just in the loss. It's in our resistance to it. The more we fight against reality, the more we suffer. But the moment we accept that life and death are woven together, we begin to heal. The Stoics even practiced something called memento mori. Remember you will die. Not as a depressing thought, but as a way to remind themselves that love and loss are inseparable. That every person we love is already a temporary gift. And instead of fearing loss, we should use it as fuel to appreciate the present moment. But that's just one perspective. Because while the Stoics leaned toward acceptance, others sought meaning in loss. Few people understood suffering like Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychologist. He lost his entire family. His parents, his wife, his brother, all taken from him in concentration camps. Despite unimaginable grief, he found something powerful. Suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it gains meaning. That doesn't mean loss is easy. But it means that if we can connect our grief to something larger than ourselves, if we can find a purpose in our pain, it transforms us instead of destroying us. Frankl's way of healing wasn't about moving on. It was about carrying his loved ones forward. He realized that even though they were physically gone, they still lived through him, in his actions, his decisions, the way he carried their lessons. He chose to honor their memory not by being trapped in grief, but by living in a way that made their existence matter. And this is something many people don't realize about grief. It's not just about letting go. It's about carrying forward. In some cultures, grief isn't something to get over. It's something sacred. In Japanese culture, there is a term called mono no aware, which means the gentle sadness of things. It's the idea that everything in life is beautiful because it's temporary. The cherry blossoms are breathtaking because they only bloom for a short time. The sunset is stunning because it disappears. And in the same way, the depth of our grief is only proof of how deeply we loved. This shifts the way we see loss. Instead of thinking, I wish I had more time with them, we can think, I'm grateful for the time I had. Instead of focusing on the ending, we can focus on the depth of the connection that was real while it lasted. Grief is the price we pay for love. But would you trade that love just to avoid the pain? Most people wouldn't, because the love was worth it. Most people don't heal from grief because they try to escape it too quickly. Society rushes us to move on, but that's not how the mind works. Healing doesn't happen when we force grief away. It happens when we learn how to live alongside it in a new way. Some people heal by creating. Pain turned into art, writing, music. These things have carried human grief for centuries. Some people heal by giving. Turning grief into something that helps others makes loss feel less empty. Some people heal by simply allowing, by sitting with their emotions without trying to fix them, until one day the grief softens on its own. No one heals the same way, and that's okay. But what's important is this: grief is not an enemy. It's an extension of love. And the more we resist it, the heavier it feels. The moment we accept it, honor it, and let it evolve, it no longer controls us. Because in the end, the people we lose don't truly disappear. They live in our choices, in our memories, in the way we carry their love forward. And maybe that means they were never really gone at all. If there's one thing that unites every human being, it's this: no one really knows what happens after death. Science has theories, philosophy offers insights, and personal experiences paint different pictures. But the truth is, none of us have returned from it with absolute certainty. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the unknown itself is what allows us to explore the deepest questions about who we are, where we go, and whether death is truly an end or just another transition. We often think of life as a straight line, a beginning, a middle, and an end. But the more we understand about consciousness, the more we realize that might not be true at all. Consider this: your body is constantly changing. Every cell in your body dies and is replaced. In fact, every 7 years, almost every part of you is physically different from before. Yet, you still feel like the same person. So what is it that remains? This is where consciousness becomes a mystery. Because while the body is temporary, something within us, awareness, memory, presence, feels like it continues regardless of physical change. Some scientists believe consciousness is just an emergent property of the brain. Others argue that it might exist independently, much like radio waves that need an antenna to be received. The body, in this case, is just the receiver, but the signal continues. Does that mean we keep existing after death? No one can say for sure. But it does mean that the version of self we hold on to so tightly might be just a temporary experience of something much larger. One of the most universal human experiences is the feeling that we are separate, individual beings moving through life alone. But if you break things down at a fundamental level, that separation starts to disappear. Every atom in your body was once part of something else. Before you were born, those atoms existed in the universe, in the stars, in the earth, in other living things. And when you die, those same atoms will return to the world, becoming something else again. This isn't a spiritual idea, it's a scientific fact. Nothing in the universe is ever truly lost, it just changes form. So when we grieve someone, we feel like they're gone, but are they? Their body may not be here, but everything they were, their energy, their presence, their influence, continues in some way. Not as a ghost, not as a mystical being, but as a part of everything that remains. Maybe that's why people often say they still feel the presence of someone they've lost, because maybe in a way that connection never really left. And then there's time. We experience time in a straight line, past, present, future. But physics suggests that time doesn't actually work that way. Some theories propose that all moments exist at once, and what we perceive as passing time is just our consciousness moving through a pre-existing sequence of events. If that's true, then the people we love, the ones we've lost, aren't really gone. They still exist in a different point of time. And while we may not have access to that moment anymore, it doesn't mean it never happened. It doesn't mean it isn't still real. Think about a book. Just because you're reading page 200 doesn't mean page 50 has stopped existing. It's still there, part of the whole. You just aren't experiencing it in this moment. Maybe life is the same way. Maybe the people we lose aren't gone. They're just on a different page. This doesn't mean we should deny grief or pretend loss doesn't hurt. It does. But it also means that the way we think about loss might not be the full picture. Maybe death isn't an end. Maybe it's just another change of form, another shift in the story. And maybe, just maybe, what we call loss is really just another way of saying, I haven't reached that part of the story yet.